Hello and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Now, tonight, as always, we're going to be coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm going to be your host this evening, and tonight we'll have the pleasure of trying to dissect the Motherwell game from Saturday before previewing the big Europa League games coming up against Fenerbahce. I'm sure we're going to have a few extra visitors tonight, so at least they can listen and enjoy a football podcast talking about a European knockout tie, something they aren't used to listening to. Before I introduce my guests, I'd like to encourage you all to visit the Gersnet website. Not only do we have our main website with a host of quality articles and online museum, but it also hosts our popular forums, which are a great place to keep up to date with the latest Rangers news and discussion. Tonight, as always, we're live on YouTube, and we'd ask that you continue to spread the word amongst your friends and family, share the pod on social media, subscribe to the channel, as well as stop by the forums and join in the chat there too. Now, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod too. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They've also got a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and for more information on that, you can email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Now to introduce my guest for this evening, Mr. Alan Rodgers. How are you doing tonight, mate?
Well, that's a daft question, isn't it?
I got to be polite.
I know. I'm well, thanks, mate. Well, thanks, mate. Apart from the obvious,
Aye, football these days tends to always ruin a good weekend, doesn't it? So, it's one of those. It just feels like Groundhog Day. Constantly a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, quickly being snuffed out by another abject performance by the team.
Yeah, well, I've got to ask you, how was hospitality yesterday? You picked quite a game to be full of drink,
Aye, well, to be honest, mate, the drink was the best thing for it because it made me forget about half the game. Although the upside of that is I then had to go back and watch some of the highlights and some of the game again for preparation for tonight. So yeah, it probably helped me live, but it hasn't helped me today because I've had to put myself through some of the aspects of that performance that I just wish I didn't do. But as you know, talking about it is a good form of therapy, mate. So I'm sure all those extra listeners listening in will take glee in this and hearing what we have to say tonight. I guess it does bring us to the game, mate, and we'll start with the team lineup. The only change really was that Ridvan had come in for Inciala, with Tav kind of being moved into centre half position again. After that, kind of seeming to work quite well against Kelly. I think the only surprise for me was that, given that we had news of Suter and Balogun being back in training, fitness allowing, I probably would have liked to have seen one of them partner proper to begin with. What about you? What were your thoughts when you first saw the lineup, and was there anything that you would like to have seen tweaked before we get into the game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we all enjoyed the comeback at Rugby Park, and it was excellent, and you could see the positives that were coming from it. But I must say, it doesn't take away from the fact certain players had really, really poor games at Rugby Park. Obviously, Inciala had one, and he was dropped completely. But Proper had a really bad game. I thought Igama and Hadji had really bad games as well. So I was maybe hoping for a wee bit of extra freshness in the team on Saturday, with the caveat, of course, that we've still got injuries and the manager's hands are tied a little bit. Ridvan at right back just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. I know he played well in the game against Celtic and we kind of got away with it, but we then kept playing him at right back, and he sort of got progressively worse. And I think you can see from a team like us that relies so much on our fullbacks getting up the pitch, as soon as Ridvan's getting up, he's just coming inside, which can work to a point. But when Motherwell can figure that out and just kind of block him off a bit, it just doesn't work. And yes, I know he had played a really good ball for Desser's goal at Rugby Park, but the positives are outweighed by the negatives for me. I think it gives a really poor balance to the side. But again, you have to say, injuries mean we just don't have many options back there, unfortunately. I've no idea what happened to Fernandez. I thought he might start next to Proper, but he just didn't even make the bench, so who knows what's happening with him. But from the lineup, I thought I was expecting a wee bit more freshness, I must say. A wee bit more. If maybe Danilo coming back in, you can understand Danilo not playing on, my Grand's lino at Rugby Park, but coming to Ibrox with a good pitch, you thought maybe put him in, a bit of freshness, bit of movement up top. So I was a wee bit frustrated that the lineup was so similar.
Yeah, no, I have to say that, mate, and I think it was something that we noticed actually for the majority of the game with Ridvan. There was plenty of space for him to push up on the right hand side, but he seemed a bit hesitant to kind of try and take advantage of it, which just gave that part of the park to Motherwell to kind of go on and push up into rather than us trying to dominate it. And I think it was really interesting that if Balogun can come on at half time to play, I would have really liked to see him to start and give Tav the position at right back, because at least we would have had a little bit more balance there. Like you say, it's putting square pegs in square holes rather than what we seem to do, which was play a number of players that probably out of their natural position. But again, I don't even think that change would have probably helped with the first topic that we're probably going to talk about, which is the infamous Super Jack Butland, although probably not so super at the moment, given his recent form. And it was after 9 minutes. Dessers does take an absolutely terrible touch. It kind of ends up making its way through to a Motherwell player. I don't know if it was Lennon Miller. I can't remember who it was, but watching it live can only be described as taking a bit of a tame shot. And then I saw the linesman's flag go up, so we kind of turned away and didn't really realise what was happening until we seen the ball in the back of the net, and then we heard the VAR review was ongoing. It wasn't until I watched it back that I've seen what can only be described as an absolute howler from Butland, and literally kind of throwing the ball towards the Motherwell player to just stick it in an empty net. And ever since he was linked with England and didn't really get that call up, his form has steadily declined. At what point do you think we need to drop him, or do you think we're actually going to have to stick with him for the next run of games, given it's 2 against Fenerbahce and then it's a game against Celtic apart ahead?
I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, for that goal, right, Dessers does take a bad touch and overruns it. But when he loses the ball, there's plenty of players back. You shouldn't lose the ball in that position and then end up conceding. And even the Motherwell player, when he goes through, I mean, it's basically a pass back. There's no power. It's right at the keeper.
Mm-hmm.
It's inexcusable that Butland fumbles that. He tries to sort of scoop it into his body, just makes a complete hash of it and does the worst possible thing, which is push it out to his left-hand side, and the player just taps it in. It's just inexplicable. If a 21-year-old goalkeeper did it, you'd be disappointed. But for a 30-year-old, he's got England caps, he's been talking about professionalism and, ambitions of the club. He's just not performing. And last time I was on the podcast, I did have a bit of go at Butland to say I don't think he's justifying his status in the squad, and that's just got worse since. If you look back, that's a horrendous gaffe yesterday, and that's on him. It's entirely on him. If you look back, he punched the ball into the net at Fir Park, but it was disallowed, and really harshly disallowed. We got away with that. He punched it in the net at Old Trafford. He lost the goal at Parkhead, a side foot from 35 yards, when he was just in the wrong position completely. Even against Stoya Bucharest at Ibrox, first couple of minutes, he was caught on the ball in the box, and the guy round him would pass it in again. He was really fortunate it was disallowed. Butland is just not performing. And there's far too many high-profile clangers from him, from a guy that you've got to assume will be one of our top earners, who's experienced, and we brought him in to be a difference maker. He is not a difference maker. He's not doing his job properly. He's not in good form, and goalkeeper would be something I'd look to rectify in the summer. We'd like to think we can still get some money for him from down south. He's had 2 seasons at Rangers now, and for me, he's not impressed over those 2 seasons. And that's before you get to his reluctance to come off his line and all this kind of stuff. He's in the leadership group. He's got to be a senior player. He's got to have that. I can do 8 out of 10 every week, occasionally a 10 out of 10. And he's absolutely nowhere near that, unfortunately. So do you drop him, given the run of games coming up? I'd be tempted. Liam Kelly did absolutely fine when we beat Celtic 3-0 early in the season. Is it Liam Kelly as good as Jack Butland? Probably not overall. But is Jack Butland justifying his place? Absolutely not. So may as well play Kelly. See what he can give you. The season's gone. So give Kelly the minutes and see if he can impress and get a place in the team. I'd have no real issue with that if there was a change at goalkeeper. There's been just too many from Butland, and it's just not good enough.
Yeah, I think it's getting to that point, mate. And you say he's not a difference maker. I think he actually is a difference maker at the moment, but just for the opposition, sadly. It's getting to that point.
Yeah, said it last time we were on. The guy Ida at Celtic, they signed him for 9 million, and they basically signed him because of Jack Butland, because he scored 2 based off Butland howlers. And it's just one of those things. He just doesn't seem to have the mentality to be a regular number one, because he hasn't been for years and years before he came to Rangers. And we always have that thing of a Rangers keeper. I always go back to sort of Antti Niemi. He was a really good keeper, but it didn't quite work for him at Rangers because he was better being active and making tons of saves every game. Whereas at Rangers, you've got to be one of those keepers. You might do nothing for 80 minutes, and then you need to pull out a worldie. And McGregor was brilliant at that. Kloss was brilliant at it. Niemi couldn't really do that, and that's why we had to move him on. And then he was a really good keeper and had some really good moves in his career. And I think Butland's being generous to him. Maybe he's a wee bit like that. He needs to be busy and active. Otherwise, he just loses focus, perhaps. But I'm probably being over generous given that I've just slated the guy. But nevertheless, for somebody that will be really top end of our wage bracket, I think that's something that we'll need to look at in the summer.
And just like the Emmy, by the sounds of it, mate, he's finished. So yeah,
I knew you were going to say let's not try and go viral here. Come on, this is the last thing we want.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I guess it didn't actually take much longer for things to get even worse. And again, we conspire to our own downfall. Tav loses possession far too easily. The ball is kind of played through midfield out to the right hand side, and then we've got a young left back Yefty who I've no idea what he was trying to do and where he was trying to position himself, because he's far too narrow, and I think it's the boy Sparrow that is just an acre of space. It's a simple little pass in, and he's through on goal. You could argue again, could Butland do a little bit better at this? With a more confident keeper save that, but it's an easy finish for 2-0, and it's another 2 goals that we've gifted to the opposition. We cannot keep doing things like this, and I think it just speaks to the mentality of some of the players a little bit, that we tend to make things really difficult for ourselves, and I don't know what the answer is going to be. Young players are going to make mistakes. We need to accept that, but they just seem to be coming for a different player every game.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I think it maybe speaks to a systemic problem. You've got this scenario, and Tav gives the ball away. I mean, it was really obvious. Tav was trying a low percentage pass because he didn't want to pass it back, because the crowd would have howled at him, because they had been on their backs already, going 1-0 down and passing it back all the time. And that's the consequence of that. He makes a really poor choice of pass, loses it. They run up, as you say, Yefty's way out of position. Guy goes in. It's a decent finish, but again, Butland, he just saves nothing. I know he had a few decent saves at Old Trafford, but again, that's him being busy and active in the game. In that scenario, he just doesn't. If it's on target and domestic, it generally goes in. I think he is proper lower mid-table in the sort of SPFL shots saved stat. For a Rangers keeper, that's absolutely wild. And that was it was a good finish from the guy. By that point, Motherwell deserved their lead. We could have no arguments about it. Defence is so fragile, and again, young Yefty. I read someone he's playing his 32nd game of the season on Saturday. In Cyprus, when he was there last year, I think he played 32 games. So he's not used to this schedule. He's young. It's only his 2nd season as a pro. He's going to make errors, and we have to accept that. But the problem always is, if he's not great at defending the back post, that's fine. But where's the rest of his output? He had a really good game against Spurs, and when he switched on, he can be capable.
Yeah.
But say what you want about Borna Barisic and him defending the back post, but at least Barisic would give you 10, 12, 15 assists a season. You can kind of trade it off, whereas Yefty's got 1 assist. It's just, when you're saying, where's the productivity within the team? We sorely lack in that sense. And someone like Yefty, again, he's not put on form. He was one of the ones, a bit like, Yefty had picked up some decent form, and then Raskin and Hadji came in and kind of refreshed the team. Igaman refreshed the team. Suddenly we thought, these players, as their promises, all their form has completely tanked and gone through the floor at the same time. Similar to last season, and it was last March, that Motherwell at home game again, where we lost that, and then just everybody's form just went at the same time. The same thing's happened, albeit a month earlier this time. And it's Motherwell again. And it's just really hard to fathom where these guys that were functioning well, Raskin was commanding games. his form's completely gone. There was another period on Saturday early on with facing our goal, Raskin gave the ball away in the edge of our own box, and we got away with it. But same as at Rugby Park, everyone blamed Nsiala for the second goal, but it was actually Raskin that gave the ball away in the edge of our own box, and they scored from it. Yep. His drop off in form has been absolutely dramatic, and it's really, really worrying because structurally the team just seems a complete mess. I mean, how many teams in Scotland play with a two-man midfield? There's not many, and Clement did it, and now Ferguson's doing it, and it's a real concern.
Yeah, it's one of the points that I was going to come on to a wee bit later on, but I think it does suggest that actually, do we need to go back to a three-man midfield, ditching the 10 and showing up the middle of the pitch, whether it's a 4-3-3 or a 4-3-2-1, but at least giving a bit of support to Raskin and Diomande if they are going to be the two centre mids that we're kind of pinning our hopes on, or who are available for selection and not injured. At least giving them some reinforcements in there to kind of win those battles and change the way they go. And I think that was some of the criticism that I saw aimed at Barry, which I think is absolutely mental, given that he's only literally had 2.5 hours maybe with the team to try and unpick everything that has happened with Clement and some of the negative style that we've got into. But I guess it's something we really do need to look at moving forward, isn't it? And a lot of this is going to be on the players as well, because ultimately a manager can only do so much to prep them. They've got to have the mentality, the work rate, and the balls to actually step on that pitch and carry out the instructions that the management team are asking them.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And you can't blame Ferguson. As you say, he's just in the door. He's coming to do a job that he was always going to accept. It's a bit of a poison chalice. We all hope he can make a good fist of it, but if he doesn't, no harm to him, because it's a really difficult gig. But the real worrying thing is, if you listen to Barry Ferguson's press conference after the Motherwell game, he's saying exactly the same things Clement used to say. The players aren't listening to me. I wasn't expecting that. I don't know where it came from. We need to work. It's the same cliche sound bites. And I don't pay as much attention to press conferences as some fans will, but it just goes to show you that there's no real answer to it. There's no real, what's going on with these players. I just don't think the system works, or the system suits them at all. You can tell, players know when they're fit, they know when they're organised, they know when they're ready for a game. If you listen to any of the players talk about the run to Seville under Gio, they always talk about the way he prepared them. And for all the criticism that get levelled at Gio latterly, they all talk about the level of preparation and tactical thinking that went into that European run. There's a great podcast with Connor Goldson where he talks about it, and, Gio bringing them in, saying, right, we're going man for man at the back against Dortmund. And everybody went, sorry, what? What? But look how it worked out. The players know when they're confident, they know when they're well prepared. And this is a side that just doesn't look like they're well prepared, and they know they're not. And when Motherwell and St Mirren and Kilmarnock and these teams can look at that and exploit that, as we've seen over the past few months, it's a really, really worrying sign. And it just lends itself to the whole thing needing ripped up and started again, unfortunately, for the umpteenth season in a row.
Absolutely, mate. And I think it comes back to we'll go back and talk about the game in a wee second, but I think it comes back to the perception that we struggle against low block in this league. The last few games, teams haven't actually sat in. They've come to play some football against us. They've came and they've pressed us high up the pitch, and we've struggled with that press. You look at the game at the weekend. Motherwell seemed to be much more organised in that press. They, as soon as we get that ball, they were on us, and it made us make mistakes. Whereas the flip side of that is we seem to be really disjointed. Motherwell played through us fairly easily on a number of occasions, and that's not what should be happening at Ibrox. When we're at home playing against a team like Motherwell, no disrespect to them, that's a game that we should be winning based on the club that we are. And I guess it kind of just smacks us the way we are just now with the players that we've got, that they need to have that bit of arrogance and self belief in them, that when they step on that pitch, they're able to handle it.
Yeah. And that's why you can see that there's a complete disconnect in the team. You've got the back four sitting there. You've then got Raskin and Diomande midfield. And then you've got a front four, essentially, that very often are standing in a straight line. They're not tracking back, they're not compact, they're giving up huge spaces in the middle of the park, and that gives Motherwell and teams like Motherwell the impetus just to move forward with the ball and just flood it. And that's what they do, and that's why they can afford to have a man over, like in their second goal and things like that. These teams are actually coming out and putting men forward against us at certain moments because they know that we're not going to exploit them on that basis. And it's really, really worrying to see the number of times that Raskin or Diamandi picked up the ball and they look up and they're just surrounded by Motherwell players. The front players are miles away from them, absolutely miles away. And again, it's this two-man midfield or playing with a 10. It's never really worked, if we're honest. It certainly doesn't work with Igaman in there. And it's just a wee bit trying to persevere with something that demonstrably doesn't work. And that's a real worry.
Aye, and I think that's where it's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks, actually, because if we can see it, surely the management team can see it, and we've now got a fair bit of time. Again, I'm going to touch on this when we got to the Fenerbahce bit, but we've now got a bit of time where at least Ferguson and the backroom staff can get the players on the grass, as he likes to say, for a few days before we go to Turkey for the game, and hopefully work on a shape and system that is probably going to suit them a little bit better. But I guess the flip side is, do you change it too much that we go into an away game in a bit of a hostile atmosphere over in Turkey? They're going to earn their money over the next week or so preparing us for that game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to balance pragmatism with realism. As you say, if you completely rip up and say, right, we're going 5 at the back or whatever in Turkey, it's got the hallmarks of the players just not grasping it, and it'd been 100 times worse. Because you've got to say our European form has been decent to good, and the system does lend itself to Europe. But you've got this weird scenario where Ferguson and Dodds and McCann, they've all been pundits this season on various media outlets, and they've all slated Rangers' tactics and Rangers' approach. You feel like, come on. So it's a bit of an awkward scenario. They've come in, they're just doing exactly the same thing, But again, you've got to see, well, how much time do they have to really change it? But from that fan's perspective, you always think, look, surely they're professional players. So if you say to them, like, we're going 5-3-2, surely they can kind of adapt, and kind of work with it. Maybe it's just a personnel problem. Balogun coming back, I think, is a big one. Fully expect him to start on Thursday night. Kind of fully expect him to go off injured at some point. Unfortunately, it's just the way it's gone for him this season. But I would expect he will come in. I'd be surprised if Suter can run, and we'll talk about Fenerbahce. Sorry, I'm jumping into the wrap, but it's just that there's got to be changes somewhere, because our next run of games, Fenerbahce, then Celtic. If we don't sort out this defence, then we could all really need a few rums in hospitality to get us through that run of fixtures.
Absolutely. And back to the Motherwell game. I guess half-time saw us make 3 changes, and to be honest, if we had a limited number of subs, you probably could have switched out the whole bloody team, and it might not have made much difference anyway. The first one I want to talk about is obviously Barami coming on for Hadji. Now, I quite like Hadji as a player, but I think, like you've mentioned, the last few games, I think his output hasn't been anywhere near the quality or the standard that it needs to be. And I think Motherwell kind of showed him up. He seemed to be snatching at stuff a little bit more. He was playing the wrong pass on a number of times. The quality into the box just wasn't anywhere near the level that we know that he can deliver. Is this just a tiredness thing, or is this just him having an off day, or a few off days, I should say, because again, he's not exactly set the header like the last few games.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, first thing you got to say, he's out of position. He's not a left winger, and he's one of the slowest players in the team. So asking him to go in the left wing is odd, and that leaves him with a choice of just trying fancy footwork or cut inside, and it's just not working. And you've also got to couple it with the fact he's allegedly not back in your contract, so is almost certainly leaving the club in the summer. And we've seen that how many times the season's gone past. Players that know they're leaving this summer. Wouldn't go so far as to say it's intentional downing tools or anything like that. I don't think that happens very often. But in the back of their minds, they'll know, I'm leaving. The season's gone. We're not winning anything. Their form just goes. We've seen it with so many players in recent seasons that's what happens. And I think Hadji's probably in that moment at the minute. And we've got nobody to replace him. Who have we got? Cortez again coming back from injury. absolutely zero. He's not in the European squad, in fact, is he? So absolutely zero chance he starts at Parkhead. So probably Hadji again.
Yeah.
Put Igaman left. I mean, maybe, who knows? But Hadji's just one of these guys that came in, he brought a real freshness to the team, and everyone's thought that's what we've been missing. Let's see what he can do. Open contract talks. Clearly he's not going to sign, and he knows he's away. And it's just the way it goes. These seasons just peter out with players going through the motions. And I've Hadji's been a really good player for Rangers, but again, indicative of the issues, and he's another player that we're going to lose for nothing. Having spent $2 million on him or whatever it is, he's been good for us. Okay, he's had some injuries, but we just can't get any money for anyone, and that's just an ongoing problem.
Aye, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And I guess the other changes were Balogun coming on for Proper, which actually showed us up a little bit, because I thought Balogun had a really good game when he came on. And the one that I probably was most surprised about was Lawrence coming on for Igaman. And I feel sorry for Igaman at the moment, because there's probably a lot of fans out there at the moment putting some criticism his way unjustly. Again, he's been played predominantly out of position. He's a young boy in a new country. He's going to have a dip in form, and it just so happens that it's coincided with so many other players in the team that have had that dip in form. I think the really surprising thing for me was the fact that it was Lawrence and not Danilo that had come on for him. But I guess what were your views on those subs at half time? Would you have liked to have seen anything done differently, or is that a case that actually it's the only pot we've got to piss in just now, so that was all we could do?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I was shocked that Lawrence came on and not Danilo. It just seems bizarre to me. The brief run of form that we had coincided with Danilo coming back into the team and playing the 10. And when he's played, I think his goals to minutes ratio is actually okay. So I thought it was a really strange choice. And let's be honest, Lawrence did absolutely nothing. He's another one. He knows he's leaving in the summer. He's just back from injury. He's not at peak fitness. He's just going through the motions. There's no point putting him in. Yeah. Whereas you might get something out of Danilo. So I was really surprised that he didn't come on. And Igaman fully deserved to get hooked. I mean, he's out of position, and a great bugbear of mine playing players out of position, but he had a really, really poor first half. Really poor. And he could have no complaints about coming off. But to come in and have a £6 million striker that you don't bring on when you're 2-0 down at home, I just can't fathom that. I just can't. Not that Danilo was great when he came on, I must say, but it's just indicative of the player trading that Rangers have done, that you invest your third highest ever transfer fee in a striker that isn't off the bench at half time in a home game against Motherwell that you're 2-0 down. It just sums it up, let's be honest.
No, absolutely, mate. And again, I think I'm not going to be too harsh on Igaman either just now, mate, because I think we need to remember that he was playing the Moroccan League. It's probably, as much as we slate the SPL for quality, it's going to be higher. It's going to be a higher quality league there. He's probably playing more games on a regular basis than he's used to. He's still learning the language. Yeah, there's lots of things that we can put up in the defence, but I think we've seen glimpses of the quality that he can bring. I guess the only frustration is if you're going to play a striker, put him in his natural position and let him lead the line. Unfortunately, for him, Dessers has got a couple midweek and another goal today to kind of justify his selection. So it's going to be hard for him to kind of argue when he's putting up numbers. But it'll be interesting to see how we line up against Fenerbahce. And we'll touch on that in a wee minute. I guess things did improve slightly after into the second half, and it took us 9 minutes into it to get a goal back through. Big CD9, balls flicked around the corner for Ridvan. I think I don't know if it was Casey, a Motherwell player, misses the ball, and actually Dessers took it pretty well. First time finish past the keeper. I think for me, that meant we've got like 30 minutes plus to get an equaliser, or at least try and get a couple of goals to take the lead again. Were you expecting the team to probably push on a bit more than they did and look for a couple more goals?
I certainly hope so. It was a good start to the second half. We got a little bit of a break with the defender missing the ball, as you say, and obviously Dessers, classic Dessers finish. He's no time to think about it. He has to take it quickly on instinct, and he does, and it's actually a decent finish. And you think, as you say, loads and loads of time to get back into this. But there just wasn't enough. It's not like we peppered the goal and our keeper had the game of his life or anything like that. There just wasn't enough. We had a ton of corners, made absolutely nothing from them. And it's just so insipid. You just think we could have played all night and not really troubled them enough. Because at this point, we still need 2 goals to win it. It's not like it's level and we need to snatch one. There's a lot of football still to be played. But it was so difficult to watch. That kind of almost horseshoe-like, passing it around the box, working it to a corner and slinging in a lazy corner. And the Motherwell 6'3" defenders just eat that up. There was no incisiveness. We didn't get in behind them at all. There was nothing. There was a lack of movement. Czerny had an absolute mare. You've got to say he's entitled to. It happens, and he's been a good contributor this season. But it was one of those games just nothing worked for him, and he didn't seem up for the physical battle.
Yeah.
And as soon as you take away our best creative outlet, Czerny, we just look so flaccid. Because guys like Raskin and Diamandi, they're just not goal threats. I know Diamandi, in fairness, had a decent dig at goal in the first half, but they're just not consistent goal threats. The number of times that our rivals across the city are struggling for a goal and it's one of their centre mids that comes up with it, it's constant. Whereas we just have nothing like that. And if Czerny's off it and Iggeman's off it, we're really struggling. And that all the more evident on a game like Saturday.
I think that was the thing that really frustrated me, was that lack of movement. Even in the first half, as you said, you almost had 4 in the forward positions just basically standing next to the Motherwell players. There was no dropping deep into space to try and look for the ball. And I think there was, I think Barry said in the post-match, maybe players are lacking a bit of confidence or a wee bit of bravery, but that's the basics that they've got to get right. You can't just stand on the pitch and expect to receive the ball if you're being marked by somebody. You've got to make that bit of movement into space to try and receive it and be a bit braver with your positioning. And that was the frustrating thing, that we still had 30 minutes to go. A bit more pressure, another quick goal. All of a sudden, you don't know what's going to happen to those Motherwell players. But we never really looked like threatening, apart from the other chance that we'll talk about now, which is the second time that Dessers had the ball in the back of the net. And this was a really interesting one, because obviously there's a couple of VAR checks during the game. This one actually gets chalked off. Now in the stadium, real time, didn't really see where the infringement was. It looked like it was a perfectly legitimate goal. You kind of watch the replays back, and I think the argument is does it touch Danilo's knee? But the replays that I've seen and the angles that I've saw, I don't know if there is a touch from Danilo there. So surely this is the reason why VAR has been brought in, is to try and get these decisions accurate and correct. And for me, it looked like it was a perfectly legitimate goal that had been chopped off yet again. Yeah,
I mean, in the stadium, I could see, I sit right in the front of the club deck, so I could see it. It didn't seem offside to the naked eye. And it was a good finish by Dessers as well. To chip it backwards over the keeper. Again, didn't have to think about it, executes it. I've tried to look at replays. I've pored over the replays. I think it's really hard to tell. People are saying there's one angle that looks like it comes off Danilo's knee, and I can see what they mean, but it could also just be the ball spinning up off the turf. It's really impossible to tell. But it's another one of those situations that if there's any benefit of the doubt, we don't get it. It goes against anything subjective, goes against Rangers. And that's the way it's been this season and beyond. So it's frustrating, because that could easily have been 2-2, and then that could lead confidence. It's what you were saying earlier on about the players looking edgy and lacking confidence. Systems and chances and all this, that breeds confidence. Whereas the opposite, if you're not breaking them down, you're struggling, that's when the confidence gets sapped. So it's this kind of vicious cycle that we can't play well enough to breed confidence, and then we lose confidence, which means we can't play well enough. And it's awful when that happens, and it happens week in, week out with this Rangers team. Again, I think it all boils down to preparation and training and knowing where each other are going to be. And yeah, God, it's depressing tonight, isn't it?
It is, mate. It is. But there are some, like little bits of light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's probably what every Rangers fan is hanging its hat on at the moment, is that there does seem to be change in the winds, and some of the issues of previous seasons with decisions being made at board level, etc. potentially will be put to one side if the takeover and stuff goes through. And I think that's probably the only thing that we can really hold out any hope for at the moment. We've obviously got a couple of big games coming up against Fenerbahce, and that's not exactly going to be easy because I think I didn't see the result tonight, but I know the last 7 games that out with tonight, they've scored 19 goals. They're unbeaten. They're obviously managed by one of the greatest managers of all time, Mr. Mourinho. That defensive coach. Are we expecting a pretty much routine score draw or away win in the first leg?
I mean, anything that's a 1-0 loss or better is an excellent result in the circumstances.
Yeah.
Now, to be honest, we should be looking at it with our recent European records, especially certainly away from home. We should be going into it with some confidence, not huge confidence, some confidence to say we can actually get a result here. But just the way it's been over the past few weeks, you just can't see it, can you? I think the best we can do is a bit of a backs to the wall and hoping for the best. I had a quick look at the Fenerbahce squad. Guys like, I didn't know they had Edin Dzeko up front.
Yeah.
I mean, he must be a fair age now, but
he's going to be a handful if he's up against Proper.
If they're slinging crosses into Dzeko versus Proper, I mean, this could be a real sore one.
Yeah, I think the boy El Nesti as well that they've got. The other striker is a fairly physical boy as well. So we know what we're going to get for them.
We've also seen they've got the guy San Maximin, former Newcastle player.
Newcastle,
Saudi.
Fred. Fred's suspended, isn't he? I think Fred's suspended for this tie. So
they've got Tadic and guys like
Tadic.
that. It's just a bit. I mean, as I say, our recent European form is good. But, if we pull a result out the bag and somehow manage to knock out Fenerbahce over 2 legs, I mean, that'll be up there in terms of our recent achievements. So, in that sense, it's a wee bit of a free hit. But, of course, you don't want to take a sore one. Last season, 2-2 away to Benfica was a good result. We didn't really perform in the home leg. It lost 1-0. Okay, fine. But you do feel that result took the wind out of the sails a bit in terms of the league domestic performance. Now, we don't really have that now because, those sales fell apart a long time ago domestically, but you still want to keep up a bit of momentum. And if you can get through, and it's a massive if you can get through against Fenerbahce, you then into last 8? You've got to draw there, and then I think it'll be Roma or I forget the other option. Anyway, it could be Roma in the next round. Now again, that would be really tricky tie, obviously for a multitude of reasons. Let's not get into it, but in the next round, you think that would be a step up in opposition, in quality of opposition. But you've got to have that to aim for, and it drives the players. And that'll be a tie in sort of end of March, early April. And it just keeps a little bit of momentum alive. Because it's horrible when the season just peters out like this. We're just counting down the games till we can stop going to watch matches. So in that sense, Fenerbahce could be quite big, but it's just coming at a really poor time for this whole squad.
Absolutely, it's Athletic Bilbao, v Roma. So it'll be one of those two when we beat Fenerbahce over the 2 legs. But I agree, mate. I think the interesting thing is you look at some of the home games that we've actually had in Europe this year as well, where the team have performed pretty well. I think the only really disastrous result was probably Lyon. But we FCSB, the Spurs game, I thought we were excellent. So I think it's bizarre that we seem to struggle so much domestically, but in Europe, the players seem to have a bit of confidence around them that deserts them when we come up against SPFL teams.
Such a bizarre team, and again, it's speaking to confidence. It harks back to that Spurs game because we weren't in good form at all going into that Spurs game. But see, after the first 10-15 minutes, the players were right getting in their faces. They were snapping in. They were winning second balls. They were going in to win second balls. They're properly, and the crowd got behind them, and it just breeds the confidence amongst the team and the crowd and everything else, and it lends itself to the performance. So I just don't understand why we can't match that domestically, and it's not even that we can't match it; we just get absolutely nowhere near it. It's the complete polar end of the scale. So, yeah, in terms of Fenerbahce, it sounds horrible, but if you offer me a 1-0 defeat right now, I think I'd probably take that, given where we are, to say, right, let's see what we can do at Ibrox. But who knows? This team have surprised us before. They've really surprised us before, and in that weird way, it wouldn't surprise me if we went there and won 2-1. Because you'd just be like, this is the roller coaster that Rangers Football Club is. But let's see. The challenge is there for the players, so they've got to embrace it.
Heard it here first, folks. That's everybody get their mortgage payment on a 2-1 win for Rangers in the first leg.
2-1. Robin Proper double, neither with his head. So there you go.
Fantastic, mate. On the subject of defence, I think we'd mentioned it a little bit earlier on. I think the manager already indicated that Suter was going to be back in the European squad. I'm assuming if that's going to be the case, would you want to see a Balogun-Suter partnership, or his performances in Europe haven't actually been that bad? Would you want to see Proper partnered with one of them?
Again, it's after we've just been slating him, suddenly we're like, actually, I think we need him. But it's that again, that's just where it is, because Proper at Man U, at Old Trafford, was really good. I thought he was excellent. He read the game well. He just took care of everything that came into his area. But at the same time, I still would be more comfortable with Balogun in there. Now, again, I'm expecting Proper and Balogun. I don't think Suter will be right back in. So I would expect Proper and Balogun with Tav, and I would play Redvan at left back, just because it's Fenerbahce. Obviously, he'll be well up for it. But I would expect Proper and Balogun at the back. And I think they can cope. The two of them on form in the European stage, they can cope. But the midfield really, really worries me. If we go in again with Egeman at a 10, with a two-man midfield, it's I think that could be a really long night for us. I think it's just one of those games we just need to shore it up. Whether it's you put Sterling in or anything like that, we just need someone sitting a wee bit closer to Raskin and Diamandi, just to give us a wee bit of breathing space on the ball. I don't think it's a night for a 10 at all.
We to be fair, the onus is on Fenerbahce to come out at us. We're lucky in some regard that we've got the second leg at home, where we could at least go there and try and sneak a result. Obviously, I wouldn't like to see us just go and sit and let them attack us wave after wave, because that's just a recipe for disaster. But I think we've got to be smarter. As you say, we've probably got to play a bit more of a strength in midfield and forego having that 10, with the hope that we can break and use our pace on the wings to
to
take advantage of it.
Yeah, I've just thought back to the Spurs game. Redvan left wing, Jeffy at the back is probably the way I would go. And I'd probably put Hadji in centre mid, not a 10, specifically not a 10. I'd say play much closer to Diamandi, because again, of course, Hadji, dad's Galatasaray legend, he'll probably be up for it as well. Kearney on the right, and probably got to be Dessers up front on his own. I think that's probably the way to go. A wee bit of pace in the side, because Hadji's, I mentioned it before, Hadji on the left with no pace really, really causes a problem. And as much as Redvan's, can't really rely on him, unfortunately, he does have pace and he can be direct when he's running with the ball. Not on the right hand side when he looks like a total fish out of water, but on the left he can do it. We saw it against Spurs. So that's probably how I would go in terms of the lineup. But if it's Egeman up there with Dessers and Egeman the 10, I think you'll just be. I would definitely give him a rest for this one.
Aye, absolutely. Make the impact on the bench on this occasion, I think. But I guess the good thing is we strategically got ourselves kind of knocked out of the cup, just to make sure that we've got a bit of extra prep time in between both legs to prepare, which is is great forward thinking from Clement and the club in that regard. But given we are going to have a bit of time this week, and obviously a full week to prepare, what are you expecting for the management and the coaching team to be able to do with the players in that short space of time? Do you think we should be working on, like we've spoken about, changing shape a little bit and tweaking the system to try and get the best out of some of these players? Because the manager obviously does rate some of the players the way that he's speaking about them and can see qualities in them. It's going to be up to him and the likes of McCann etc., to kind of fix some of these tactical issues that they've been calling out. The next probably week and a half is the prime opportunity for them to be able to do some of that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's got to be. They've got to have the nous to look at a game like this and say that we just need to stiffen it up through the middle. They have to do that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Fine. Fenerbahce are a good side, really good manager. That's okay. It's okay. It's no disgrace to go to a place like Turkey and lose an away leg. It happened. But we have to make a fist of it. We have to be better than we've been. Now, of course, the problem, as we keep discussing, is this Rangers team can't break down a low block. Completely clueless when they come up against a low block. Whereas against a more expansive team that comes at you, counter-attacking wise, we can actually play pretty well. But we have to get our press right. We have to get the work rate right. Czerny, he can work back, but other times he can be lazy getting back. And that's how we approach it. On Thursday, it will be difficult. So it's up to the management just to instill that belief in the players and just to give them that confidence that they can go out and perform at that level against these opponents. Barry Ferguson versus Jose Mourinho. You've got to love that. You've got to love it. And then let's see what we can get out of them. So it's at the end of the day, you've got to look forward to it. And as much as it's been a grim weekend, as much as we're sitting here a bit kind of self-deprecating and that it's all grim, see, come sort of Thursday afternoon towards the end of work, I'll be sorry. I'm right up for this. I think we may be able to do this. What are the odds? It's just the way it goes. It's just the life of a football fan. So you've got to have that belief because we've got it in us to do something on Thursday. We do have it in us.
Absolutely.
Whether we see it or not is a different kettle of fish. But fingers crossed.
Absolutely. I'll be sitting in an airport trying to get reliable Wi-Fi to make sure that I can watch the game before I catch my flight home. So it's going to be interesting.
You're coming home, all right? It's okay. So you're not back in the Caribbean now.
No. I'm not back in the Caribbean, mate. In London for a few days next week for work. So it should be interesting. I guess the other thing I wanted to touch on, and it's probably not going to be as big an issue for us because again, these players are used to being playing at Ibrox on a European night where there is a ferocious atmosphere, albeit in support of them. But do you think that the atmosphere over there is going to play any part in the players, given how fragile they seem to be at the moment, or is that something that we shouldn't really be too worried about? We obviously hear that Turkey can be fairly loud, fairly aggressive, in your face. Will the players let that affect them?
They've got to try and not let it affect them. It's always the way, and it's an old cliche, but opposition managers do it at Ibrox quite successfully. But I say, see if you can frustrate the home crowd, it works to your advantage. And that's how we've got to go out and do it. We're both old enough to remember the 90s, the whole welcome to hell stuff in Turkey, and the team bus, running the gauntlet of fireworks and bottles of piss. I don't think it's really quite like that anymore. But it will still be loud, there'll be boisterous, there'll be ultra sections and all this kind of stuff, and away support that will be drowned out. But again, if you can get on the ball, if you can, fashion some chances, if you can actually acquit yourself well, then you silence the crowd, you take them out of it, and that's the challenge for the players. That's what they've got to try and achieve, because if they can do that, then it can be a huge advantage. But of course, the opposite's true. If we start the way we started against Kilmarnock and Motherwell, and let them get on top of us and let them pepper our goal and they're ripping us apart, the crowd will just get noisier and noisier, and that's when teams get their pants pulled down. So those opening stages are really, really crucial, and they have to be 100 times better than we've seen from the Rangers in the last couple of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you kind of get your mentality right for a last 16 tie in the Europa League, then it's probably a sign that you really shouldn't be at a club like Rangers, because ultimately,
but that's again, think back to that Leipzig game when Goldson was caught in the tunnel on the microphone. Can't remember the exact phrase. He was like, "Look, don't care what they're worth, don't care what their names are. They don't have a team like us." And it was that kind of. And the team believed. They knew that they were well organised and they knew they were capable, and they went out there and delivered. So you've got to have that belief. You've got to say, look, our record in Europe is good. Our away record is good. We've won multiple European away games this season. Even going to Greece, the Olympiacos game, we're really unlucky not to win that. And after that was after going 1-0 down as well, and we responded really well. So, we've shown it in the past. So there's no reason the team shouldn't believe. But, again, we've just gone from this horrible pessimism at 9:30 to about 10:30 now, and suddenly we're going to beat Fenerbahce on their own patch. This is what I like. This is why this podcast is good therapy.
It's the life of a football fan, mate. And I guess leaving on-field stuff behind just now. I don't think I've had the chance to catch up with you actually around the noises around takeovers and all that sort of stuff. I guess it seems to be gaining fairly positive momentum. It looks like it is something that's progressing fairly well. What do you hope that will signify for us? Do you think there's going to be wholesale changes that any incoming new board will make, or do we think it's going to be change over time and gradual changes and improvements that we'll see, rather than it being a massive rip everything up, start again, and clear the deck type thing?
First thing to say, just earlier tonight, it was Keith Jackson from The Record was on their podcast thing, and he was essentially saying, look, this takeover is really, really close. Really close. And that's what the Jungle Drums have been saying for the past couple of weeks. That even when the news broke, they say, look, this is much further down the line than you'd think. And I know there's been flights from Scotland to South Africa recently and all this kind of stuff. I think it is quite far down. So I think it's a case of, if we can announce it and give the club a boost, it might just placate the fans a wee bit. But to answer your question, I think this is going to be ripping up and starting again. I really think it is. I suspect these new owners will come in, they'll have their own men on the board, they'll probably retain a couple of bodies, maybe as almost a token gesture. But from what I know and what I've read about them, and I've listened to Leeds fans' podcasts about the way this company operate, they're all in on their franchises. I hate that word, but for the sake of the discussion, it's accurate. They're all in on it. There's no half measures. There's no, we want to be involved because we want to be involved and it looks good and it makes us feel like big men. These are guys that are serious about the investment and serious about taking the club forward. I'm expecting pretty much a rip it up and start again, because you've got to think about it. They're going to have to buy shares. They're going to have to buy the shares to get 51%. And then they're probably going to have to do a further share issue to allow them to invest. And, they've already said, or they've strongly hinted that they're going to look at, stadium and facilities and things like that, things that can generate income. And then they're going to have to address the squad. Because as I said, I can't know if I said it at the pod or if I just said it to the bus, if these guys can come in and put together a squad and put in place a coaching staff that can get us through Champions League qualifiers, that money's transformative now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Straight away, if you can get through and it's 35 million, whatever it is, straight away just for getting in that expanded Champions League group, that makes the difference. And in terms of their investment, that's a huge amount clawed back immediately. And I think they'll see that. So it would be a real wasted opportunity if we didn't have a real root and branch reform this summer. And I mean, from medical staff, sports science, scouting operations, everything. Again, from what I read about it, these guys are plugged into a much wider worldwide scouting network. So I'm not expecting, us sending, Andy Dibble to go watch a game in Honduras to report back. I mean, I think those days are going to be long gone. I think it'll be all, database from worldwide, data-based from worldwide databases that these guys operate within. And I think they're real serious operators. So, the future's bright. The future's San Francisco 49ers. And we've got to hope that this can come through, because we need it. If we didn't have this to cling to, it would be really, really grim. And sadly, we're in that position where we just have to cling to this. But thankfully, it does have substance. It does look like it's going to happen. And it does look like it could be the start of a real new chapter for the club, because that's exactly what we need. And a reinvigorated Rangers this summer with genuine business acumen behind the club, with genuine wealth, if needed, behind the club, then it could be a really exciting, positive development. And to be blunt, it has to be a positive development, because if this doesn't work, what next?
I know, absolutely, mate. And I think that's the thing that's exciting about it for me, is that if it does go through, you're hoping that there's going to be people making decisions in the best interest for the club at the top, and taking away a lot of the challenges that we've seen over the past maybe 2, 3, 4 years with some of the weird decision making that's gone on with stadium expansions and all that sort of stuff. So if we can get that side in order, make it easier for a manager to come in and work with quality players, then yeah, the future should be bright. So
yeah, and also think they're gonna come in, and I think they'll know they have to make a bit of a statement. Now, I'm not saying we're going to come in and buy a £10 million player or anything daft like that. I mean, that's not going to happen. But I think they know they need to come in, and there's going to be a bit of buy-in needed from the support, because I do expect season ticket prices will increase. Right? I mean, they will increase. There's a 20,000 in the waiting list, in a way it'd be really daft not to increase them. But I expect ticket prices will go up, and managers will go up, and all this kind of stuff. So they're going to need a wee bit of buy-in from the support, and whether that's through some decent signings or like squad rebuild or new manager that was, would have been beyond our reach before, who knows? But that's the acid test for them. Can they get the fans on board immediately? Because the fans will be absolutely desperate for a regime they can fully support. And in that sense, it's a wee bit of an open goal.
Yeah, and I think we as fans also need to be mindful that there are going to be restrictions still in place regardless of how big a pot of money you've got. Financial fair play still exists; it's still a thing, and there are going to be things that they might have to do, like stadium naming rights, to be able to kind of generate cash to be able to put into that pot so we can actually spend it. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really, I think communication is going to play a massive part in that. That if those are the types of things that they're going to need to generate, then they're kind of open and honest about it. Because if it's done, behind the scenes in brown paper bags, that sort of stuff, then the fans are going to be a bit nervous based on what we've seen with owners before, and naturally be cautious when it comes to that sort of stuff. But parental health, Ibrox Stadium maybe has a bit of a ring to it, but who knows what will happen. I think it's just something.
I think your phraseology is really important. If it was Ibrox Stadium presented by whoever, you could probably get away with it. I mean, we can both remember the dark days of the Sports Direct Arena and stuff like that. I mean, it just chills you to the bone. But done right, it's sponsorship for Old Rope, but Ibrox as a name needs to be retained. But the commercial opportunities for this kind of stuff is exciting as well. Obviously, we're always most interested in things that happen on the pitch, but when you look at Red Bull being involved with this company, again, obviously would never tolerate Red Bull Rangers and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's even on their minds at all. But the fact that Red Bull have got the stake in them, they've assisted with Leeds. Red Bull on the front of the jerseys or whatever it may be, absolutely fine. Getting partnered with those proper top-end commercial enterprises and investors could be a real boost for the club. Because that's something that we need as well, because our commercial revenues are excellent. They really are. And the fans have put their hands in their pockets to support that. And that won't have gone unnoticed. We should look back on this podcast once we win the European Cup. What, 3 seasons maybe? Is that too pessimistic?
3? Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
But yeah, we have to be positive. We have to cling to something positive, and that's the best thing we've got at the minute. So I did watch another Rangers podcast where the presenter turned up with a 49ers cap and top on and all this kind of stuff. So we're not going to go to that.
Funnily,
no. Oh no. We're the best one in the world, Rab. The last thing I want to see is you stripping off on webcam, right?
Exactly.
At least not when loads of other people are watching. Okay.
And Frankie will be pleased, because I think tonight I've almost kept it to time rather than running over like I normally do. So I just want to say a big thank you, Alan. I think it's been fairly therapeutic talking about events over the weekend. It's a really good chat, mate, to be honest. And hopefully everybody out there has enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See you soon.
No problems, mate. As well as being live on YouTube tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms. That's iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, etc. as well in the coming days. I'm pretty sure we'll have the team back probably Friday to review the Fenerbahce game and have a look at the second leg that's coming up. But all that's left for me to say is a massive thank you for all those watching live on YouTube, and a big thank you to those again that are listening again. Take care and have a good week.